Hey, I wanted to explain a little bit more on inflammation and how that affects the skin. So I get into the body's release of proteins called IL-17, and then get into your body's reaction over it. And I pick on eczema and psoriasis just as extreme autoimmune challenges. So yeah, and then I get into how CANhaveTODAY can effectively soothe and help in the healing process.
All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive into inflammation
Okay.
and specifically how it affects your skin.
Sounds good.
A lot of our listeners work with their hands
hmm
all day, every day. You're out in the elements, you're exposed to all sorts of things.
Right.
So we wanted to bring in an expert
Yeah.
to kind of break down the science behind what's going on with our skin when we experience these things and maybe give us some tips on how to kind of keep our skin healthy.
Awesome.
So
Yeah, I'm excited.
let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What exactly is inflammation?
Yeah. So, inflammation is really your body's natural defense mechanism, right? It's kind of like if you think about it, like sending in like the first responders whenever there's any sort of injury or infection. So let's say you get a cut or you, are exposed to some sort of bacteria or virus.
Right.
Your body mounts this inflammatory response to try and protect itself.
Right. So is it always a bad thing then?
That's a good question. And the answer is no, not always.
Okay.
So there are two types of inflammation. There's acute inflammation and there's chronic inflammation.
Okay.
And acute inflammation is actually a good thing. That's that initial response to injury.
Right.
And it's what helps your body heal.
So like if you get a cut and it heals up, that's acute inflammation doing its job.
Exactly. It's localized, it's temporary,
Yeah.
and it's crucial for healing. But then there's chronic inflammation.
Okay.
And this is where things can start to go wrong, right?
Okay.
So chronic inflammation is when that inflammatory response kind of gets stuck in the on position,
Okay.
even when there's no injury or infection to fight off.
So it's like your body's immune system is constantly on high alert.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's just kind of hammering away even when there's no damage to repair.
And the constant hammering away, that's what leads to things like eczema and psoriasis, right?
Exactly. Those are kind of classic examples of what happens when chronic inflammation goes unchecked.
Okay, so for our listeners who are, working with their hands, they're exposed to the elements all the time, maybe dealing with sweat and grime, how do those factors play into this whole inflammation thing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that's really relevant for a lot of people, right? Because when you think about it, those are all potential triggers for inflammation, right? So if you're constantly exposed to harsh chemicals or
Yeah.
irritants, whether it's cleaning products or solvents or even just dust and dirt, that can really irritate your skin and kind of kickstart that inflammatory response.
Okay.
And then you add in things like extreme weather.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah,
Like scorching sun or freezing cold.
absolutely.
How does that affect things?
Yeah, both extremes can really dry out your skin and damage that protective barrier, right?
Yes.
And make it more susceptible to inflammation.
So it's kind of like wearing down your skin's armor
It is.
and making it easier for those irritants to get in and cause problems.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we've got the external factors down.
Yeah.
But what about internal stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Does what we eat affect inflammation?
Absolutely, it does. And one of the biggest culprits when it comes to inflammation is refined sugar.
Really?
Yeah, when you consume a lot of sugar, it triggers the release of these little messengers in your body called cytokines.
Cytokines, I've heard of those.
Yeah.
Aren't those the signals that kind of ramp up inflammation?
Got it. They're like the alarm bells that tell the immune system to go into overdrive, right?
Okay.
So if you're constantly snacking on sugary foods, you're basically keeping those alarm bells ringing, which can lead to chronic inflammation throughout your body, including your skin.
So it's not just about, weight gain and those kind of things.
Yeah.
It's actually affecting your body's immune response.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really a systemic issue
Okay.
when you have too much sugar in your diet.
That makes a lot of sense. But I know a lot of folks working long hours, grabbing food on the go.
Yeah.
It's tough to avoid those sugary snacks.
It is. definitely a challenge, but even small changes can make a big difference.
Okay. But let's dive a little deeper into the science behind all this.
Okay.
You mentioned cytokines.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about a specific one called IL-17A?
Yeah, so IL-17A is a really interesting cytokine because it plays a key role in a lot of inflammatory skin conditions
Okay.
like eczema and psoriasis.
Okay.
And what's fascinating about IL-17A is that it's like a master conductor
Okay.
of the inflammatory response.
So it's like the boss cytokine calling the shots,
Exactly.
directing the action.
Exactly. And while it's crucial for fighting off infections,
Right.
when it's overactive, it can actually cause those skin cells to multiply too quickly
Okay.
and lead to those thick, scaly patches
Right.
that are characteristic of conditions like psoriasis.
So it's a powerful force that needs to be kept in check.
Exactly. It's all about balance.
Okay.
And that's why understanding the role of IL-17A is so crucial for managing those chronic skin conditions.
So we've got some interesting research articles on this topic. We've got kind of like a dictionary of immune responses.
Yeah.
And then we've even got some opinions from some experts
Yeah.
about how all this science relates to skincare products.
Right.
So kind of a lot to unpack, but the big question that we're going to try to answer today is, why do some skin problems, they just seem to linger forever, right? And others clear up so quickly.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is that different cytokines trigger different types of inflammation.
Okay.
So it's not all created equal.
So like knowing which cytokine is the problem is like the first step to finding the right solution.
Exactly. And one of the ones that we're going to talk about today that's a real troublemaker is called IL-17A.
Okay.
And this is a major player in chronic skin inflammation, particularly in a condition called psoriasis.
Okay, so if you've ever dealt with psoriasis, that's the one that's like the really stubborn itchy rash that just won't go away.
Right.
IL-17A could be the culprit.
Exactly. And what the research shows is that it really ramps up your immune response. So it causes a lot of inflammation.
Okay.
And it can even disrupt your skin's natural barrier.
So it's not just like making you uncomfortable, it's actually like damaging your skin's defenses.
That's right. And that's why psoriasis can be so difficult to treat, because you have this cytokine that's essentially calling in the troops and
Yeah.
causing this big inflammatory attack that's hard to get under control.
So how is this IL-17A different from other cytokines that might be involved in, say, eczema? Because we've got some information here
Yeah.
about IL-4, IL-13, and IL-31.
Yeah, so it's all about their role. Like, think about it this way. IL-17A is like the general in charge of the psoriasis army, whereas the other ones that you mentioned, IL-4, IL-13, they're more like specialists.
Okay.
They're focused on things like allergic reactions and itch.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So each one kind of has like its own specific job to do.
exactly.
Like different workers on a construction site or something.
I love that analogy. Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind when you're looking at skincare products because,
Yeah.
it's not just about slapping on any old cream. You really want to get to the root of the problem.
Okay, so it's not just about treating the symptoms. It's about actually getting down to like what's causing the problem in the first place.
Exactly. We need to think about both upstream and downstream solutions.
Okay, so upstream being like you're going right to the source of the information, and downstream is more like dealing with the aftermath.
You got it.
Okay, I like this analogy I saw in one of the articles. It said, imagine a leaky faucet is causing a puddle. You could just keep mopping up the water, but it's probably better to just fix the leak.
Exactly. You want to get to the source of
least-
the problem.
So let's kind of dig a little deeper now into what these cytokines are actually doing in your skin.
Okay.
And I think we've got some good examples from the research here.
Yeah, so let's stick with psoriasis and IL-17A for a minute because one study found that it triggers the production of a whole bunch of different molecules in your skin.
Like, what kind of molecules are we talking? Like, are we getting into complex chemistry here?
Yeah, well, it kind of causes like a chain reaction. So it sets off this cascade of events where you get this surge in inflammatory molecules, chemokines, these things called antimicrobial peptides,
Okay.
even proteins that are involved in tissue remodeling.
So basically, it's like causing just a whole cascade of chaos down there.
That's one way to put it, yeah. And it's why, just using a basic moisturizer might not cut it for something like psoriasis.
Right.
You need something that's really going to target those specific molecules that are causing all the trouble.
Yeah, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone or something.
Exactly.
It's not going to work.
You need the right tool for the job.
Right.
And another thing that's really interesting from this research is that even when psoriasis seems to have cleared up on the surface, there may still be some lingering inflammation underneath.
So you mean like even when your skin looks fine, there could still be trouble brewing?
That's right. the study found specific cytokine patterns in what they called resolved psoriatic skin,
Okay.
which suggests that there's still some residual inflammation going on.
So that's kind of scary. But okay, so what does all of this mean for us when we're at the store and we're trying to pick out skincare products? Like, how do we even know what to look for?
Well, it really comes down to understanding your specific skin concerns.
Okay.
Because what works for one person may not work for another.
So for someone with like chronic, stubborn inflammation like psoriasis,
Right.
would targeting that IL-17A be a good strategy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And based on the research, it does seem like a promising approach.
Okay.
You know, using products that are specifically designed to block or neutralize IL-17A
Got it.
could be more effective in the long run.
And then for someone dealing with like more acute symptoms, like a sudden, eczema flare-up or something,
Right.
maybe they should be looking for something that's focused on like repairing that skin barrier or reducing itch or something like that.
Exactly. Different conditions, different cytokines, different solutions.
Okay, so we've got IL-17A on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
The inflammatory cascade is in motion.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through the stages of this whole process?
Sure. So let's imagine you get a cut on your hand while you're working, right?
Okay.
That's the trigger, right?
Step one, trigger.
Exactly. Your skin cells immediately sense the damage,
Okay.
and they release IL-17A and other cytokines,
Got it.
like a distress signal, right? Calling for backup.
Okay, so what happens next?
So the immune system kicks into gear, right? White blood cells rush to the site of the injury,
Sure.
ready to fight off infection. And that's when you see those classic signs of inflammation. The redness, the swelling, the warmth.
Right.
It's all part of the healing process.
So those blood vessels are dilating, bringing in all the reinforcements to fight off those invaders.
Exactly. But in conditions like psoriasis, that IL-17A can cause those skin cells to multiply way too quickly,
Right.
leading to that buildup of thick, scaly plaques.
So it's like the immune system gets stuck in overdrive, causing more harm than good.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And that's why understanding how to modulate that immune response,
Okay.
particularly the role of IL-17A, is so important for managing these conditions.
Okay, so we've got the trigger, the immune response, and then those chronic effects.
Mhm.
But let's talk about a symptom that's especially bothersome, itch.
Yeah.
What's the science behind that maddening sensation?
Itch or pruritus is actually more complex than you might think.
Okay.
It's not just a simple irritation. It's this complex interplay between inflammation, those nerve endings in your skin, and your brain.
So it's like your skin is sending a message to your brain
Exactly.
saying, hey,
Yeah.
something's not right here.
Exactly. Those inflammatory signals we've been talking about,
Right.
they activate those sensory nerves, which send signals to your brain telling you to scratch.
And for someone trying to work, that constant urge to itch
Yeah.
must be incredibly distracting.
Absolutely. Yeah, it can be debilitating, especially in jobs where you need focus and dexterity.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. The basics of inflammation, the role of IL-17A, the inflammatory cascade, and even the science of itch.
Mm-hmm.
But let's shift gears now. Let's talk about this this dictionary of immune responses that we mentioned earlier. What is that all about?
Yeah, this source is really cool because it really gets into how different cells in your body react to these cytokine signals.
So like a cytokine could send out a message,
Right.
but different cells might interpret that message differently.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah, the same message can have totally different meanings depending on who's receiving it.
Okay. I need an example here. This is getting a little too abstract for me.
Okay, how about this? Think of it like getting a text that says free pizza at the office.
Okay.
If you get that message, you're probably pretty excited.
Yeah, I would be.
But if your boss gets that same message, they're probably going to have a totally different reaction.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Same message, different reactions depending on who you are.
Exactly. And the research shows how this plays out on a cellular level. They actually have these really cool visuals
Okay.
that show how cytokines can cause different gene expression changes depending on the cell type.
Gene expression, is that like changing the cell's instructions or something?
Yeah, think of it like flipping a switch that turns certain genes on or off,
Okay.
which then influences how the cell behaves.
Interesting. So how does all this relate back to skin inflammation?
Well, it means that inflammation isn't this like one-size-fits-all process. It's incredibly complex. It depends on a whole bunch of factors. You know, which cytokines are involved, which cells are receiving the signals, even your own genetic makeup.
So everybody's skin is kind of like its own little unique ecosystem.
I love that analogy. That's a great way to think about it. And that's why finding the right skincare routine can be so tricky. What works for your friend might not work for you.
So personalized skincare is really important.
Absolutely. It's about figuring out what your skin needs and targeting those specific pathways.
Okay, and speaking of pathways, this research also talks about something called secondary responses
Right.
to cytokines. So what does that mean?
So this means that one cytokine can trigger the production of other cytokines. So you get this kind of cascade of effects.
So it's like one sets off a whole bunch of others.
Exactly like a chain reaction. And for example, the study found that certain cytokines like IL-2, IL-12, and IL-15 can stimulate natural killer cells to produce interferon gamma.
Okay, back up for a sec. Natural killer cells, what are those?
So these are part of your immune system's rapid response team. They're kind of always on patrol looking for infected or damaged cells to eliminate.
Good.
And then interferon gamma is another cytokine.
Okay.
And it's a powerful one. It helps really ramp up your immune response to fight off infections.
Okay.
But too much of it can actually contribute to inflammation and tissue damage.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Then we need it, but we don't want too much of it.
Exactly. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
And this dictionary of immune responses really helps us see how these intricate signaling pathways work together, both in health and disease.
Wow. It's amazing how much is going on beneath the surface of our skin.
It really is. And all this knowledge is leading to much more targeted and effective treatments for skin conditions. It's not just about slapping on a cream and hoping for the best anymore.
Right.
We're really getting down to the nitty-gritty.
So the more we understand these mechanisms, the better we can address these problems.
Exactly.
Why is IL-17A so important, especially for our blue-collar listeners? I know you mentioned psoriatic arthritis earlier, but are there other conditions it's involved in?
Well, yeah. IL-17A is, it's a key player in a whole range of inflammatory conditions. And these conditions can be especially tough for people in jobs that are physically demanding. Think about construction workers, mechanics, firefighters. These are folks who are constantly putting stress on their bodies, their joints, and muscles.
Yeah, they definitely don't have it easy.
And that kind of strain can make them more prone to developing things like psoriatic arthritis. But it's not just that. It can also contribute to back pain, tendinitis, even certain types of skin inflammation.
So this little molecule, IL-17A, can really have a big impact on someone's ability to work and even their overall quality of life.
Absolutely.
But how do frankincense and myrrh actually help with IL-17A? Did the study actually directly measure IL-17A levels?
Well, while they didn't directly measure IL-17A in this particular study, the connection is still really strong. Remember how frankincense and myrrh reduce those other inflammatory molecules like TNF-alpha?
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, TNF-alpha is what we call an upstream regulator of IL-17A.
An upstream regulator. Okay, break that down for me. I'm not sure I follow what you mean by that.
Okay, imagine a chain of command. Let's say on a construction site. You've got the foreman, and he's the one giving orders to the crew.
Gotcha.
So you can think of TNF-alpha as being kind of like the foreman in this scenario. It sends the signal to produce more IL-17A.
Okay, so it's like the one calling the shots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means that by reducing TNF-alpha, what frankincense and myrrh are doing is essentially cutting off the orders at the top, so to speak. So less IL-17A ends up being produced.
Ah, that makes sense. So it's like they're disrupting the whole communication system that leads to inflammation in the first place. Yeah. It's a pretty clever way to approach the problem.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why this research is so promising, especially for those folks who are working those tough blue-collar jobs.
Yeah, definitely.
It suggests that a natural approach like Healing Legends could offer real help for people who are trying to manage those IL-17A-related conditions and, just generally feeling their best.
So we've got these ancient remedies that have been used for centuries, and now modern science is starting to back up their effectiveness. And it seems like they're especially relevant for folks in those blue-collar jobs who are at a higher risk for developing these inflammatory conditions.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how this all ties together.
Yeah, this is pretty fascinating stuff. But let's bring it back to that IL-17A molecule we were talking about earlier, the one that's so relevant for our blue-collar listeners. What did the researchers find out about these ancient ingredients and IL-17A?
Well, they went a step further and actually tested 5 specific bioactive compounds.
Okay.
These are compounds that are found in frankincense and myrrh.
Interesting.
And they wanted to see how these individual compounds on their own affected the production of various inflammatory molecules.
Including IL-17A.
Including IL-17A. Yeah.
So they went from studying the whole resin to looking at the individual ingredients.
Yeah.
Like taking apart a car engine to see how each part works.
Exactly. They wanted to break it down and see what each piece was doing. And what they found was pretty remarkable, actually. These individual compounds, especially one called acetyl acid, which is found in frankincense, were able to actually inhibit the production of IL-17A.
Wow. So they actually pinpointed a specific compound that directly targets IL-17A. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and it gets to the heart of why healing legends could be so beneficial, especially for people in blue-collar jobs. By combining frankincense and myrrh, it brings together these powerful compounds that can directly go after IL-17A, and that means that it could help manage those related inflammatory conditions.
That's incredible. This is why I love doing these deep dives. You never know what kind of amazing discoveries we're going to make. But wait, there's more, right?
There is.
I remember you mentioning something about those individual compounds affecting the MAPK pathway as well, the one we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, you have a good memory. You're right. When they tested those 5 bioactive compounds, they found that some of them were able to influence the activity of the MAPK pathway in a way that further reduced IL-17A production.
Wow. So it's like a 1-2 punch against inflammation. They're hitting IL-17A from multiple angles.
Precisely, and that really speaks to the complexity and power of these natural remedies. They're not just acting on a single target. They're working on multiple levels to restore balance and reduce inflammation in the body.
It's like a well-coordinated team on a construction site.
Yeah.
Everyone's working together to get the job done efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, it is.
So to recap, we've got frankincense and myrrh working together to reduce those inflammatory messengers. They're modulating the MAPK pathway to keep those signals under control. And now we've got these individual compounds like acetyl acid that are directly targeting IL-17A.
Exactly. And all of this points to healing legends being a potentially valuable tool for anyone who's looking to manage inflammation naturally. And this is especially true for our blue-collar listeners who are really pushing their bodies to the limit day in and day out.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not just about pain relief, it's about supporting the body's natural healing abilities.
So let's break it down. I know inflammation is a hot topic these days. What's the deal with inflammation and how does it affect our skin, especially in the context of eczema and psoriasis?
Well, inflammation is like your body's natural alarm system. It's a defense mechanism that kicks in when there's an injury or something's irritating your skin.
Okay.
Think of it like this. You get a cut, the area gets red and a little swollen. That's inflammation at work, bringing in the reinforcements to heal and protect you.
Okay, so short-term inflammation is actually a good thing. But this research really emphasizes that chronic inflammation is the real troublemaker.
Yeah, imagine that alarm system going off constantly. It's going to wear you down and cause more problems in the long run.
Right.
Chronic inflammation is a key player in conditions like eczema and psoriasis, leading to that persistent redness, itching, and discomfort.
The research actually dives into some interesting triggers for inflammation. Walk me through how this inflammatory process actually plays out in our skin step by step.
Let's imagine you're on the job and you accidentally scrape your arm against a rough surface. That scrape, that's your trigger. It disrupts the skin barrier and your body immediately senses a threat.
Okay, so the alarm bells are going off. What happens next?
Your immune system kicks into gear, sending those first responders' immune cells to the site of the injury.
Okay.
These cells release a flood of cytokines, including our friend IL-17A, to initiate the healing process.
So it's like sending in the medics and the construction crew to assess the damage and start repairs.
A perfect analogy.
Okay.
And this is where we start to see the visible signs of inflammation, redness, swelling, maybe some warmth and tenderness as blood rushes to the area to help with the healing process.
So far, so good. It sounds like our body is doing what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely. But here's where things can go awry in conditions like eczema and psoriasis. This inflammatory response doesn't quite shut off when it should. Instead, it keeps going. And those immune cells keep releasing cytokines like IL-17A, causing more and more damage to healthy skin cells.
So it's like the construction crew keeps demolishing and rebuilding even after the initial damage is repaired.
Precisely. And that's why we see that chronic cycle of flare-ups with eczema and psoriasis. The inflammation never really gets a chance to calm down.
Wow, this is really eye-opening. It's not just about treating the symptoms on the surface. It's about understanding what's happening deeper down. How do they address this complex inflammatory process, especially for those of us dealing with the demands of blue-collar work?
Well, let's start with water's mist. Think of it as your on-the-spot relief crew. It's formulated with a potent blend of natural ingredients that work together to immediately calm inflammation and soothe irritated skin.
The research mentioned tea tree oil as a key ingredient. What makes it so effective?
Tea tree oil has been used for centuries for its incredible anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties.
Wow.
It works by helping to quiet down those overactive cytokines like IL-1B and TNF-alpha that are fueling the inflammatory fire.
So it's like sending in the firefighters to contain the blaze.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And what's really interesting is that Water's Mist contains a higher concentration of tea tree oil than Healing Legends, making it particularly effective for those immediate flare-ups you might experience on the job.
So it's like having a first aid kit specifically designed for your skin.
Exactly. And those other natural ingredients in Water's Mist, lemongrass and cinnamon oil, they bring their own superpowers to the table, providing additional antibacterial and anti-inflammatory benefits.
Okay, Water's Mist sounds like a must-have for anyone dealing with those on-the-job skin irritations. Now, what about Healing Legends? What's its role in this two-pronged approach?
Healing Legends is all about long-term support and prevention. It's like bringing in a team of expert engineers to rebuild and reinforce the damaged infrastructure of your skin.
So it's less about putting out fires and more about building a stronger foundation to prevent future fires.
Exactly. And one of the key ways it does this is by helping to regulate that troublesome cytokine we talked about earlier, IL-17A.
Our friend, the sometimes misguided general.
That's the one. Healing Legends helps to keep IL-17A in check, ensuring it's directing the immune response in a healthy, balanced way rather than attacking healthy skin cells.
That's incredible. So it's almost like retraining the immune system to respond appropriately.
You got it. And on top of that, Healing Legends helps to repair and strengthen the skin barrier, which is essential for keeping out those irritants you encounter every day on the job.
Okay, so it's like building a stronger wall to protect your skin from those external threats.
Exactly. And to top it off, Healing Legends stimulates collagen production, which is like giving your skin that extra boost of strength and elasticity it needs to stay healthy and resilient.
Wow, this is all starting to make so much sense. It's not just about slapping on any old cream. It's about understanding the science behind these conditions and choosing products that address the underlying causes.
I couldn't agree more. And what's great about Healing Legends is that it's gentle enough for everyday use, even for sensitive skin.
That's so important, especially for those of us who are constantly exposed to harsh environments. It's like giving your skin a daily dose of TLC.
Exactly. It's all about creating a healthy and resilient skin environment that can withstand the demands of your work and your life. And, it's not just about the products themselves. Being mindful of the potential irritants you encounter in your work can make a huge difference.
That's a great point. We can't always control our environment, but we can definitely take steps to protect our skin.
Absolutely.
Speaking of irritants, this research also mentions that dry skin itself can be a major trigger for those with eczema and psoriasis. It's like a vicious cycle, right?
It is. When your skin is dry, that protective barrier is weakened, making it easier for irritants and allergens to penetrate. That triggers inflammation and that dreaded itch, and then scratching can further damage the skin, making it even drier. It's a tough cycle to break.
So staying moisturized is key, especially in jobs where you're exposed to harsh conditions that can strip away your skin's natural oils. It's like making sure your skin's defenses are always up and running.
Exactly. And that's another area where Healing Legends can really help. It not only strengthens the skin barrier, but also helps your skin retain moisture, making it more resilient to those daily challenges.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. But let's talk about that itch for a moment. I know it's a huge problem for people with eczema and psoriasis. What makes it so intense and persistent?
Itch is a fascinating and complex sensation. It's not just a simple reaction to irritation. There's a whole network of nerves and immune responses involved.
The research mentioned something called neuroimmune circuits. What are those, and how do they relate to itch?
Remember those cytokines we talked about, those chemical messengers that orchestrate the inflammatory response?
Yes, they're like the communication network of our immune system.
Exactly. Well, some of those cytokines can actually activate sensory nerves in the skin, sending signals to the brain that are interpreted as itch.
So it's not just the inflammation itself causing the itch, but also these specific signals being sent to the brain.
That's right. It's like a double whammy. You've got the inflammation causing discomfort at the site of the irritation, and then you've got these nerve signals amplifying that sensation in the brain, making it feel even more intense and persistent.
That explains why it can be so hard to ignore. And the research also mentions something called nerve overactivation. What's going on there?
In chronic conditions like eczema and psoriasis, those nerve fibers in the skin can become hypersensitive, almost like they're constantly on high alert.
So even the slightest trigger sets off those intense itch signals.
Precisely. And that's why even things that wouldn't normally bother you, like a light touch or a change in temperature, can suddenly become unbearable.
That sounds incredibly frustrating. No wonder it can have such a huge impact on people's lives.
It absolutely does. Chronic itch can disrupt sleep, make it difficult to concentrate, and even lead to social isolation. It's a serious issue.
Okay, so we've got the inflammation, the dry skin, these neuroimmune circuits, and nerve overactivation all contributing to that relentless itch. It's no wonder eczema and psoriasis are so challenging to deal with.
They are, but understanding the science behind these mechanisms can help us make more informed choices about how we manage them.
So how do Water's Mist and Healing Legends fit into all of this? We know they address inflammation, but how do they specifically target that itch?
Well, Water's Mist provides that immediate cooling relief by calming the inflammation and soothing irritated skin. The tea tree oil's antimicrobial properties also help reduce any microbial irritation that might be contributing to the itch.
So it's like hitting the pause button on that itch response, giving you a moment of relief.
That's a great way to put it, and the lemongrass and cinnamon oil in Water's Mist add to that soothing effect, providing additional anti-inflammatory benefits.
And what about Healing Legends? How does it address that deeper level of itch?
Healing Legends takes a more long-term approach, targeting those underlying factors that contribute to chronic itch.
So it's not just about masking the symptom. It's about addressing the root of the problem.
Exactly. By strengthening the skin barrier and reducing overall inflammation, Healing Legends helps to prevent those itch signals from firing in the first place. And its ability to regulate IL-17A activity is key in calming those overactive nerves that are sending those persistent itch signals to the brain.
So it's like finally giving those nerves a chance to relax and reset.
Exactly. And that can make a world of difference for people dealing with chronic itch.
This has been so informative. It's amazing to see how science is unraveling the complexities of these conditions and developing targeted solutions like CANhaveTODAY's products. I think this information is especially empowering for blue-collar workers who are often on the front lines dealing with these skin challenges day in and day out.
I completely agree. Knowledge is power, and understanding how these products work can help people make informed decisions about their skin health and find real, lasting relief.
It's all about giving your skin the support it needs to thrive, even in the toughest environments.
Absolutely, and it's about listening to your body and seeking professional guidance when you need it.
So to recap, we've got Water's Mist for that on-the-spot, relief from inflammation and itch like a quick cool down after a long day in the sun.
It's like having a portable oasis for your skin.
And then we have Healing Legends for long-term care, strengthening the scare barrier, calming those overactive nerves, and preventing future flare-ups. It's like investing in heavy-duty work boots that are built to last.
Exactly. It's all about providing that ongoing support and protection your skin needs, especially in demanding work environments.
And, one thing that really stands out to me about CANhaveTODAY is their commitment to using natural ingredients. I know we touched on tea tree oil and Water's Mist, but what about Healing Legends? What kind of natural powerhouses are in that formula?
Healing Legends features a blend of ingredients that have been used for centuries for their healing and restorative properties: myrrh, frankincense, and bergamot.
Myrrh and frankincense. Those names sound so ancient and mystical. It's like we're talking about ingredients from an ancient scroll or something.
They do have a long and fascinating history. Myrrh is known for its incredible anti-inflammatory and wound healing properties. It's like nature's own bandage, helping to soothe and repair damaged skin.
So it's like having a little bit of ancient wisdom bottled up in Healing Legends.
Exactly. And then you have frankincense, which is a powerful antioxidant that helps protect the skin from damage caused by environmental stressors. Think sun exposure, pollution, even those harsh chemicals you might encounter on the job.
So it's like a shield for your skin, deflecting those daily attacks.
That's a great way to put it. And to round out this powerful trio, we have bergamot, which is known for its ability to enhance collagen production. Collagen is like the scaffolding that keeps our skin strong and firm. So bergamot is like giving your skin that extra boost of support it needs to stay resilient.
It's like reinforcing the foundation of your skin's health.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so appealing about CANhaveTODAY's approach. It's about working with your skin's natural healing abilities, using ingredients that have stood the test of time.
It's like combining ancient wisdom with modern science to create a skincare routine that truly supports your skin's overall well-being.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from the science of inflammation to the specific challenges of eczema and psoriasis, and how CANhaveTODAY's products can help.
And we've explored how these challenges can be particularly impactful for those in blue-collar jobs who often face unique environmental stressors that can take a toll on their skin.
So for all of you hardworking folks out there, remember that taking care of your skin is not just about vanity, it's about your overall health and well-being.
It's about feeling confident and comfortable in your own skin, no matter what challenges you face.
And I hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge and the tools you need to make informed choices about your skin health. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this conversation, it's that you don't have to suffer in silence. There are solutions out there, and understanding the science behind them can empower you to find what works best for you.
Absolutely, and never hesitate to reach out to a healthcare professional if you have any concerns or questions.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the world of skin health. We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and take good care of yourselves, especially your hardworking hands and skin.